Hi everyone, welcome to my video. Tonight I want to talk to you a little bit about who I am as an intrapersonal learner, what it is I've learned from this course, and how I've used that information to create my first made unit of study. So, let's get started with a little bit for all you visual learners out there. So really what I did here was just include a few things that I like, that I'm into, distractions, things that kept me preoccupied during this whole long course of study, things that have just helped me get through those tough times. This picture I've included here is me and my wife. She is looking particularly beautiful, so I was happy about that. And also I don't look red for once, so that made me quite happy. So I want to talk to you about Webb's Depth of Knowledge. This is a guide on a PDF that we received in one of the early emails in this class, and it really just breaks down an overview of what each section is: depth of knowledge, level 1, 2, 3, and 4, recall, reproduction, skills and concepts, short-term strategic thinking, and extended thinking. Now going down here, what we have is a really nice breakdown of what that is. What does that look like in a classroom? What possible products could you give to your students? Again, we've been researching apps that really do fall into this section here. What is the role of the teacher and what is the student going to be doing just at that level? Here are some potential activities that can be really useful in the classroom. Now, what I'm going to show you is the remaining 3 levels of knowledge, but within the context of my unit plan. So I use this template here, which I liked an awful lot. It's nice and straightforward, it's well edited, and it just helps me plug in the information that I need to put in there. So what I'm teaching is chapter 1 of my textbook on 8th grade social studies American history. The first chapter is early exploration and settlement. For the student learning objectives, what I did was just plug in the depth of knowledge process. And how that is going to look in the classroom. They're going to be familiar with and be able to recall key vocab words. That's a huge part of the challenge for me as a special ed teacher, is just getting these students to recall information that we did, that they did either last year or that we did together just that week. It's a real genuine challenge. I spent the entire year trying to get them to identify main idea as well as analyze the text-based evidence all at once, and that was my biggest downfall my first year. What I've learned this time now looking at this is how to break it down and make it a little more logical. Finally, we finish up with the extended thinking, where they actually get to create something of a nice product. So we cover all the intelligences. We use some hardware technology in the classroom. I've borrowed the Common Core standards for language arts, which are appropriate for social studies. The section may not cover all of these, but these will eventually lend themselves to the rest of the chapters that I'll cover. And here are my ISTE technology standards as well. So, starting out with week 1, section 1, I wanted you guys to kind of see how this is going to look in my classroom when my students actually get back there in August. I like to start out every day with a nice daily informal warm-up. This is really going to spiral back to prior knowledge. It's going to be tough for them the first few weeks back, trying to remember anything from the 7th grade learning world history, but that's ultimately the goal. They do need some of that information before we move forward. So day 1 is really taken up with just refreshing those little exercises and then watching a video. There's some really great videos out there on YouTube, some excellent channels to subscribe to if you're a social studies teacher, or if you teach anything really. There's just a lot of good videos out there. And so I'll be using those videos to help introduce these different concepts to my students. I was reluctant to use videos my first year because I just kind of had a stigma. I felt that was bad, but I've learned that you really do have to have some kind of audio, visual there for your kids to keep them engaged. So week 1, day 1, section 1. Students start out watching a video on the first Paleo-Indians moving into South and North America, having come across the Bering Land Bridge from East Asia. And again, those videos will not go over really 15 minutes because research has shown that that's not always the best for our students. Moving on to day 2 is where we actually start breaking into depth of knowledge. This is where they're going to recall and reproduce the information using one of the apps we've introduced them to, and they will spend the entire period doing that. My biggest mistake was trying to get everyone to do everything all in one day and then do that 4 or 5 days in a row. By the 5th day they were exhausted. So now I will break it down a little more logically. Day 2, depth of knowledge 1, just stick with the recall and reproduction. This is good for your interpersonal learners, good for your verbal linguistic learners too as well, to kind of gather all of those key words together. Day 3 is going to be a little tough logistically because that is my short period. That's a Wednesday. But this is the day that they're going to be squeezing out that main idea, that central idea and theme. That's something I struggled with the whole year, was trying to get my students to understand the main idea of something they've learned. So again, using some of the apps we've been introduced to, some of the things they've done the previous day to record those, now they're going to be trying to arrange that information and really categorize it, which is where your naturalist learners are going to come in there. So then they're going to be able to start comparing and contrasting information they've gathered just to come up with the main idea. Moving on to day 4, Thursday, depth of knowledge 3 is the analysis. That's really the metacognition. Do they actually know how it is they've come to their conclusion, their main idea? Are they able to identify specifically what text-based evidence allowed them to arrive at that conclusion? This is where your logical learners are really going to come into play, because they're going to be able to identify each of those pieces of information that they gathered and how they apply to the main idea that we'd all agreed upon the previous day. Finally, coming up to day 5, depth of knowledge 4. This is the extended thinking, the in-depth analysis. This is where I actually want to challenge my students to create something and give it back. I don't want to be plying them with busy work this year like I did last year. I know that a lot of pieces of paper I hand them are going to get lost and never seen again. So this is where the technology actually comes an advantage for both me, the teacher, and then the student. Pixton is a really cool app for creating a comic strip. Kinesthetic learners can be used here to act out all the information that they've learned so far that week. They're going to be antsy, they're going to be moving around anyway, so this is the time to really use their talent to help the rest of the students. These are fun activities as well, that just help really tie all the learning together. So just a brief overview of week 2, section 2, the Age of Exploration. When it comes to depth of knowledge recall, I'm actually breaking down into 4 groups for Jigsaw, just because there's a lot more concepts. These concepts here, these key terms, they come from the chapter summary of my textbook, and that's really just informed the main points that they're going to hit upon. But because there's a lot more in those sections, they will have to break up into groups. And again, not everyone will get everything, but that's fine. Coming down to week 3, now you've got 2 sections in 1 week. This is where the use of groups for jigsawing is going to be doubly important, because there's twice as much information for the same amount of students to get in the same amount of time. Again, as the teacher, you're just going to have to accept that not everyone will get everything. So, from weeks 2 to week 3, we've covered the Age of Exploration, Columbus, the Columbian Exchange. That's a really good learning for them to take away. And then coming into Spanish America and the Race for Empires, which really shows how the ideas for coming to build this great nation came to be. So hopefully you enjoyed and understood my approach a little bit there. This was quite a revelation for me, and that made me very happy to realize I was going to go into my second year with more of a game plan. please let me know if you have any questions.